Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film and wrapping up my jokingly dinosaur sandwich of Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, and then Lost World Jurassic Park. And we have Luke here from SiftPop joining me. Luke, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And yes, we are talking about the Lost World Jurassic Park, which Steven Spielberg returned for. I guess this is his first sequel that was not an Indiana Jones movie that he's trying out. And there's a lot of interesting things to say about this movie because definitely shook things up a bit from the first Jurassic Park movie.
Definitely.
And we'll be getting into that. But if you haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments on Welcome to the Wasteland. We have coming attractions. We have the feature of film and then some recommendations for you. And this episode coming out August 26, 2022. So there's some interesting end of the summer type releases coming out. And Luke, which one are you most excited about?
If I had to choose, I would choose the 3,000-Year-Old Longing by George Miller. George Miller is always fascinating director. He's the guy who's obviously done the Mad Max stuff, but also Babe, Big in a City. So you never know what you're gonna get, or Happy Feet. It's really. I think it would be really hard to find somebody whose filmography as a director it would be so varied. So yeah, definitely that.
Yeah, this was my most anticipated. It kind of dropped because I saw reviews because it came out in some of the festivals and it's getting mixed reviews, but I did see the trailer. I'm like, this looks insane. And between Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba in it, I'm like, some great cast, incredible, crazy visuals and stuff like that. So at least it's going to be a crazy ride. So I'll at least take that. My number one most anticipated is Samaritan, which this has been bouncing around for a while during COVID and apparently landed at Amazon. So this is going straight to Prime Video. So no theater, no nothing. And basically Sylvester Stallone was a famous superhero named Samaritan, except he's thought to be dead for 20 years. And some kid realizes that that's who he is. And he kind of comes out of this hiding that he's been in. And I'm a fan of Sylvester Stallone. I think this is an interesting idea for a superhero story of somebody coming out of hiding to come back and, would like to not remember Judge Dredd from the 90s, but seeing Stallone do a different superhero movie or comic book type movie, I think it's interesting. And it looks a little gritty, which I could appreciate that too. So I'm always down to see Sly pop up in some stuff. So, and because realistically, you don't see a whole lot besides Rocky movies at this point. So I'll take it. But yeah, this is the last weekend of August. It's that weird end of the summer where it's just they're taking some chances with some movies. And I am kind of interested in The Invitation as well, that new vampire horror film. But we'll see how that goes. And then a couple other random things. And then we'll be turning the book into September and Pinocchio, which is the first big thing coming out on Disney Plus at the beginning of September. But we're not here to talk about those in depth. We're here to talk about The Lost World Jurassic Park. And Luke, what interested you in coming on for this particular episode?
Well, as a diehard Spielberg fan, well, who isn't? I've always loved most of his films, and I from interacting with people and talking movies with different kind of people, I've noticed that this movie Lost World gets short shrifted a bit, and I always felt it's not that bad. I always thought it's actually really good. So, and I just rewatched it 4 hours ago just to remind myself if it's actually as good as I think, or maybe not as great as I remember, because it's been, before this rewatch, it's been possibly 10 years since I last watched it. So I just thought, you know what, I'll just watch both Jurassic Park and the sequel back to back just to kind of prep for this.
Awesome. And I also have a higher appreciation for this movie than I feel like most people do. And it confuses me when people are like, Jurassic World is the second best Jurassic Park movie. I'm like, no. Like, there's a distinct difference between
100%.
any of the three original Jurassic Park films, which, to be honest, Jurassic Park 3, directed by Joe Johnston, is just a 90-minute monster movie.
Yes.
But, like, it still has Alan Grant in it, who's a better character than anybody in the Jurassic World movies. But, like, this film, to paint a bit of a picture, because Spielberg took a year off from directing after he finished Schindler's List. Who could blame him? And what happened was the book Jurassic Park and the film Jurassic Park became huge. And people were clamoring for Michael Crichton to make a sequel, which he was not happy about. He was like, I don't do sequels. I don't want to do a sequel. But as it turned out, Spielberg got him together with Spielberg's screenwriter who did the screenwriting with Michael Crichton. Because the first film, Crichton did the screenplay.
Yes.
Spielberg brought in somebody and reworked it. They meet, they put things together. They're kind of writing the book and the screenplay at the same time. And we get the film that Spielberg wound up directing here. And some of the other changes too, because starting with Schindler's List, Jans Kaminski is Spielberg's new cinematographer and his cinematographer for like the rest of his career. So like you could tell Spielberg films have a different look to them ever since Schindler's List. And I think that's one of the things that sticks out, big difference here between the first film and this one, is that the first Jurassic Park film is livelier. There's brighter colors, stuff like that. This is a lot grittier. And I also love what I think sets the tone for this is the first time you see Ian Malcolm.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just like,
yawning in the subway. From the scream to him, from the woman screaming because her daughter is being attacked by the tiny dinosaurs. I did some velociraptors. It's something else. And yeah, we cut to him.
Yeah, they're like the little teeny guys.
Yeah. And we cut to Ian Malcolm yawning, and we still hear her screaming. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Which I think Spielberg's trying to tell us, hey, the wonder that was in the first film is gone. Mm-hmm. Because we've seen it. It's not novel anymore. So now this film feels like it's more about the consequences of, like, really more focused on the consequences and the danger of the situation. And of course, we get our first taste of dinosaurs out in our world, which is the third act of the film. But Luke, what are some of the things that stick out to you most that you really appreciate about this film?
While rewatching both Jurassic Park and World, well, Lost World, meaning to say, because obviously we're not talking about Jurassic World, it kind of gets confusing with this franchise.
Use different words.
Exactly, yes. No, but what I've noticed is exactly what he's saying. Those two feel so different. And I kind of thought it might be, you know how we have different decades and each decade is different filmmaking. Like 70s is like this neo-gritty realism. 80s is full of cocaine and bright colors and muscles. And I feel like Jurassic Park, because it was 93, correct? It was 93.
93, the first Jurassic Park came out.
So it's just starting the 90s, but it still has some sort of kind of fantasy elements of the 80s, the kind of wonder of 80s almost, when we see the dinosaurs for the first time, right? That's a great scene, and it still works today. But the soundtrack, everything kind of feels more almost. It is a fantasy. Well, no, it is a sci-fi, and the second half of the movie it's more of a thriller, almost a horror at some points. But it kind of does feel a bit more fantasy-ish, whereas Lost World, it feels more here we are in the 90s. We've arrived, because 90s films have this kind of almost back to 70s in some way. They kind of try to let go of the 80s, because now people realize that, yeah, 80s were kind of silly. Like, don't get me wrong, I love me some 80s movies, but those movies had their silliness to them, and it almost that I think that's what the people spot first, is the kind of jarring difference between that kind of almost a fantasy feel to the first one, whereas the more of a realist approach to the second one, I would imagine. I would say, at least.
And I think that's a really important distinction that you pointed out, Luke, because yeah, this comes out in 97. Spielberg's filming this in 95, 96. This is him after Schindler's List. So
after
like
he's finally won the Oscar. After he finally won his directing Oscar.
He wins that Oscar for Schindler's List. He comes off a much darker film. This is post-grunge 90s era at this point. And yeah, culture changed a lot and different sensibilities. Because like, I don't know, we haven't quite hit 99 yet with like The Matrix and Fight Club and stuff like that. But like, we're inching our way to it. And to be honest, I feel like this movie feels more like Crichton's Jurassic Park than Spielberg in the first film, because if anybody's read any Crichton, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more violent. It's a lot more technical in terms of like the science and stuff in it. It's not like a fun, wondrous, ooh, dinosaurs. No, it's scary. Like, they're going to kill you. And I feel like you get that vibe more in this film. It's darker, it's grittier, it's more saturated. There are not as many moments in this film that feel like big sprawling wonder. It's a lot more action, I noticed too, and they rely a lot more on CGI in this film because they are doing a lot more action. Because like, you're not going to be able to use animatronics to do like the poaching scene where you have Pete Postaway's character leading the way and all of these hunters chasing down all these dinosaurs. Like, you can't use animatronics for this. Like, they heavily utilize the CGI. You have the whole scene with them running from the raptors in the tall grass. Terrifying. Them running into the cavern with the waterfall and everything. It's like, it's darker, it's scarier at times, and it's a lot more action oriented. And I think those are at least a few of the things that really stick out that makes this different than the first Jurassic Park.
What I also noticed about this one specifically compared to the previous one, Spielberg at least is clever enough not to try to capture the fantasy or the magical moment. And the first time we actually see those big animatronics, the first time we see the dinosaurs, because the first movie we see glimpses. It's kind of like Jaws at a sense. We see glimpses for the first half an hour, and it's only after then we see the big dinosaur, and we actually see, oh, there's this dinosaur, there's this dinosaur, and we don't get to see the T-Rex until an hour in. We don't get to see full-on raptor until like hour and a half or hour and 20 minutes in. So, and that's the thing. Those are the scenes you remember. Even though if you rewatch it, you will discover, oh, it doesn't come on until much later on in the movie. And in this one, he is aware, there's no point. It wouldn't be logical to try to recreate it, that sense of wonder, because we all know what we're getting into. So might as well try to get to it. And it has some benefits. It has some like not great points. So but I do appreciate that aspect of that movie.
And you're right too, because the first scene we see dinosaurs is with the Stegosaurus, and there's a stampede. Like, right off the bat, there's more danger right off the bat in this scene, this film, and like, even Ian Malcolm is very different in this film because he's beyond being, because like, he was the questioning one to begin with in the first film. And I think his character makes the most sense in this one to bring back, because he's right off like, this is a bad idea. You're stupid. What the hell are you doing? I'm going in, getting these people out of here. And
to me, it made sense. Because he is more bitter, But there's
Yeah.
a reason for that, because if you remember the Jurassic Park, he's the more kind of flamboyant. It became a meme. Just Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. It's a
Yeah.
meme now. The flamboyant, open chest, the shirt, scene. It's more flamboyant, and then he realizes, oh, there's an actual danger. People are being killed. This shouldn't happen. And I think this is the other thing about him being the main character. It's more it's the contrast is much starker, because we known him, or the audience knew him as this flamboyant funny guy, that laugh. And now, yes, exactly, that's one. And this time around, he is way more, almost you could say, bitter. He still has some laugh, or he still has some jokes, but he can tell there's like, he is kind of more concerned, because not
Yeah.
only we get to meet his daughter, but also he's been there. He knows it's a bad idea, and he says, "Oh yeah, this time there's no fence, there's nothing, so we're just going in, with no security." That's great.
Yeah. And compared to the first film, I think one of the things that's a step down is the script. And I feel like two reasons. One, the dialogue is so memorable and iconic in the first film. Like, I feel like every other line you can quote. This film doesn't quite get to that point with like memorable dialogue. And I also feel like a lot of the characters are less interesting this time around. Cause like I didn't feel as connected. And like the whole thing with his daughter, that just seems like a tacked on like annoyance more of kind of thing. And like that just controversial scene of her doing gymnastics and kicking a raptor out. Yeah, and the very obvious stunt double. Like that scene sticks out like a sore thumb in this movie. I think Julianne Moore's good. She's a great actress. And I do think it's funny seeing Vince Vaughn in this.
Yes.
Because one, this and Psycho, that ill-advised remake, were like his first two big movies. And it's very interesting to think about. I do think one particular character in this film is a really interesting addition, and that's Pete Postlewaite's character, the big game hunter. And because he's complex, he has a layer of like, he's not just there to just, I want to go profit off of these dinosaurs. He has some interesting moral code for himself that he has and he goes by. And I can appreciate that character. And it's sad seeing him disappear after the second act. I feel like his presence is missed a little bit, but I do like, I give this movie credit. That third act is a bold choice, like a bold choice. And they went there. And I can't imagine being in 97 in a theater being like, there's a T-Rex like running by a Blockbuster. Like that.
San Diego, yes.
Yeah. And so like, I just think it feels a little less original. It feels a little less well written and less inspired that way. But it does make up for the fact that like, there's some really good thriller moments. Even that scene with Dieter, Peter Stormare's character, being chased down by those little dinosaurs. And the camera work too was really inspired. That was creepy. Like their point of view running up to him from all angles. I'm just like, dang, Spielberg's going all out here. So like, I could appreciate this movie. It definitely feels much more of a thriller and a horror film and an action film than the first Jurassic Park. But like, it misses some of the magic, I feel like.
I almost 100% agree with you with everything you just said. I agree. That's what's again on my first rewatch after 10 plus years, possibly. I've noticed, yes, the story never fully gels together. It just feels like everybody is in their kind of tiny movies. And the characters, they have some banter, but mostly it seems really forced. Like the first movie, for example, the kids, they should be annoying, and most kids actors, they are annoying because they need to be, And most adults, I don't think they know how to write kids, so they give them those, oh yeah, you just shout a lot, scream, scenes.
Yeah.
And somehow those two never bothered me. Even when I was a kid, they never bothered me. Even now, rewatching it when I'm 30, almost 31, they still never bother me, because they are such an important part of that story and part of a Grant's character, Dr. Grant. And now this is the only point I would slightly push back on, is Ian Malcolm's daughter. I thought her addition, the gymnastics, yes. If I think the gymnastics scene is the cherry on top of weird cake. I don't know if you've seen the Honest trailer, the Screen Junkies done for Lost World.
I think I watched that a long time ago.
They kind of pointed it out that entire sequence it feels like a Laurel and Hardy sketch, and he actually, inserted the sped up the footage and inserted the vaudeville kind of music. And yes, and now on the rewatch, I agree, because the Raptors are kind of slipping. They are just punching on they are bumping on the walls and stuff. It kind of feels a bit vaudevillian, and yeah, her gymnastics is cherry on top of that weird 10-minute segment of that movie. But I really liked his character, because her character, relating especially to, she serves almost as a more of a grounding level for Ian, because even in the first movie, he says, yeah, I have 3 kids. Oh yes, okay, he's got kids. And now we see one of them.
Oh, I love kids. I have 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And, yes. And now we see one of them, and we can hear, oh yeah, he's not that great with that, he's never around. And then we hear Julianne Moore's character saying the same thing. I don't want you to save me on this island. I wanted you to save me 3 weeks ago from that boring dinner, or I wanted you to be there, when you didn't show up for when we were supposed to meet your parents. That kind of thing. And you kind of get a sense through those two female characters what he actually is, or where he can improve, to put it like that. And that's why I liked, and I did like his relationship with her daughter, with his daughter, because yeah, I thought, again, was she needed? No.
Oh, and you know what? Honestly, what you're talking about too, because here's something interesting to point out about the first film. Dr. Grant and Ellie are our people. We know them from the beginning. We see their dynamic. We see them as layered people. Ian Malcolm is really a quirky, crazy performance and walking ideas. So, like, Malcolm doesn't even feel like a fully layered character in that sense. Because, like, besides the fact that he makes that off comment about, oh, I love kids, I have 3 of them. Besides that, like, we don't really know much about him.
Yes, we understand he's a quirky guy. We understand he's maybe a bit kooky guy, because he's just, he's got the flamboyant ways. But yeah, we don't get to know him that much, because suddenly everything is happening all at once, and there's action, and we need to tend to dinosaurs because they are on the loose. Yes.
And you bring up a good point, because in Lost World, he's like an actual layered person. Like, we get to know him like he's not a great father. He doesn't seem to be very good at relationships either. And, he's the main character now. So, like, you kind of have to get to know him, or we don't have as much to connect with. And, honestly, you made a really good point about those kids in the first film being so essential to Grant's growth as a person. His daughter is a big part of between his daughter and Julianne Moore's character, they're important pieces to his arc as a person. And maybe it's like, in this film, they don't do as much to make us care about as many characters as we did in the first film. But, like, we really do and are supposed to care about Ian Malcolm. And I do. And, Jeff Goldblum's great. And they do a good job of trying to flesh out his character with this. And he has a chip on his shoulder professionally and ideologically, because InGen tried to destroy him. So, like, he's not a big fan of them. and he actually like legitimately like wants to take it to them. But you know, I do think the biggest highlights of this film are the action and the suspense and the set pieces. You know, the two T-Rexes attacking with the baby T-Rex in that giant, well-constructed mobile vehicle that they have. Because like that's just like A plus like design for like to set a really suspenseful scene.
Yes.
And they made a really good set piece around it.
100%. That probably is the highlight of the movie, that attack, and then what happens after that, how they are climbing the rope, slip out, climbing, and yet again something happens, and it's just kind of push and pull game. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, I could see why people might have been a little bit disappointed with this film because it doesn't feel like the first film. But I appreciate because like not gonna lie, it kind of feels like Temple of Doom versus Raiders. Like Spielberg went a little darker with it. Luckily, he did better with the female lead and the kid in this movie than they did Temple of Doom. Because my God, if Kate Upshaw type character was in this movie, I would want to pull my hair out. Ian Malcolm would have been like, "I'm leaving you on this island. Goodbye. I'm taking my daughter and getting out of here."
Probably.
But I guess, Luke, do you have any other main points or things that you wanted to specifically talk about?
I let me think about it. I think the important lesson for me was I did view this movie with a bit of a tinted glasses. I realized, yes, it's still a great movie, but it might be not as great because of all the screener issues, or like screenwriting issue, and the characters are not just gelling 100%. But I would still say there's no competition. It is still second best Jurassic, whatever Park World Kingdom, whatever you want to put there, out of this franchise, second easily, which kind of says something about the franchise rather than the quality of this one. Even though, again, it is a Spielberg. It is a Spielberg not producing, as it's the case with the rest of those, but it's a Spielberg behind the camera. So you can still see the visual, as we talked about before, the raptors approaching in the field, and you just see them just dragging behind, or that waterfall scene where the guy freaks out because there's a snake in his shirt, so he runs towards the T-Rex, and then you just hear the scream, and suddenly you just hear and then you just see the blood dripping from through the water. Those visuals are still so Spielberg in a sense where the movie might not be 10 out of 10, but it's still, those moments make it worthwhile. Whereas the third one, meh, and the new one, don't even get me started on those.
But yeah, the technical aspects, the action, the thrills, the horror elements, it's Spielberg still. He is an auteur, legendary director, and he's killing it with it.
Yeah.
It might have some script problems and makes it like this isn't something like Terminator and T2 Judgment Day, where like Judgment Day is like an amazing sequel.
Yeah.
It's a step down, but it's still a really, really good movie. And the issue is it all just goes downhill from here. Because like even with Jurassic Park 3, that just feels like that movie lacks soul in it. Like that just feels like we're here for 90 minutes. Let's see how many people we can mutilate and how many different dinosaurs we could cram in here. Like, let's kill that T-Rex within the first like 10 minutes on the island.
But it did give us the talking raptor saying Alan. That
Alan.
Scene. Yes. that's just oh my god. No, but it lacks, see what you said, it lacks the soul. This is exactly what I thought about when I came out of the screening of the Jurassic World in 2015, because I did actually go to see it in a cinema because I thought the trailer looked decent. And when I sat through that movie, and I was one of the first ones to say this is the most average movie I've ever seen because there's no soul in it. All of it is CGI, but it's such a blatant CGI. And there's the characters. I like me some Chris Pratt, especially in 2015. He wasn't as big of a star as he is now.
Yeah.
And Bryce Dallas Howard also great, but they have no chemistry whatsoever. And that movie, and yeah, it lacks soul. It's a technically well-made movie, I guess, to a point, but just like it never like I would like to rewatch it because it's quite. I rated 5 out of 10, middle of the road. I wouldn't be surprised if it dropped on my next rewatch if I choose to rewatch it because I'm not in any rush to rewatch it. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping at this point that they file this with like the Terminator as like franchises that you please just let die.
Yeah.
Just like, here's the thing. I don't want to see a Terminator sequel unless James Cameron's making it. Which, to be frank, he's never going to because he's going to make Avatar movies until he dies.
Yes.
And I don't want to see another Jurassic movie unless Steven Spielberg's directing it. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's probably not. Yeah.
And there's some other franchises that I felt the same way about. Like, I was shocked by Predator. Prey really got me. And I'm like, see, if you do something a little bit different and fresh, maybe you could revitalize something. But like most of these franchises don't do something interesting and fresh. They keep rehashing the same crap over and over and over again. Exactly. Even with Dominion, they're like, if we bring back, hear me out, Sam Neill and Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum, they'll love it. And it's just like, no, I didn't love this movie. First off, you didn't spend enough time with them. I actually care about them. I don't care about the rest of your characters.
I still haven't seen it. I would have, because I was so disappointed with the first one, well, with the Jurassic World, and now with the sequel, and I was like, okay, maybe if this third one, it looks bad, even from the trailers I've seen, I was like, this just looks all over the place. But I was like, you know what? Maybe if the first reviews are great, and from the people I follow and I trust, if they say, "Oh, this is actually really they nailed the ending," great, I'll go watch it. And then the reviews came in, and it seems like there's nobody who likes this movie. Like in its so far I've yet to read one positive review about that movie. So once it hits some sort of streaming, service I subscribe to, I might watch it just to see how bad it is. But I haven't seen it.
When Alan Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm aren't on screen, I don't care. Like, I felt it when they came back on screen. I'm like, oh my God. And then they were off screen for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
I didn't come to watch these people. But yeah, so, at this point, if you haven't watched Lost World Jurassic Park in a while and you just remember it as being a disappointing sequel, give it another chance. Go watch it. Honestly, maybe you'll appreciate it more after watching 3 Jurassic World movies. There you go.
Yes, I would say one last point. I would say I think it's the Star Wars thing all over again. If you think about it, we have 3 movies. Well, I know they are not. The third one is not really a sequel. They are not really direct sequels. You can argue even the Lost World is not a direct sequel. Like it is, but it's not because the characters. There's where is Alan Grant? Where is Ellie? Where is But we have 3 movies, and we've got 3 Star Wars movies, the originals. And when the prequels came out, people were just not happy with them at all. And over the years, people were like, okay, maybe they're not that bad. And then the sequels came out. And once it all fell apart, when we learned at the end of the third one, there was no plan for those 3 new movies, people actually went back and seen the prequels for what they are. Flawed, good movies. They have screenwriting. That's the problem. But the actual overall narrative of those 3 movies is great, and there is an actual arc. for most of those characters. Yes, is the screenwriting a problem? Yeah, George Lucas should not be writing screenplays. I think we can all agree on that.
I think George
And the
Lucas is an
same,
ideas man,
yes, exactly.
and
Like
he's
he
really
should go
good at
back.
that. He should
Yes,
just not
building
direct
worlds.
movies or
Yes.
write them.
Yeah, get him to build the world, get him to give you some details, but then give it to somebody who can actually, write great dialogues and give it to those people and also, by the way, direct people to actually give you some good line readings. And I
And
think, just to finish the point, I think this Jurassic franchise, if you want to call it like that, is the same thing. I think people were really low on specifically this movie, and now, since we had disappointment after disappointment after major disappointment from the looks of the Dominion, I think people now should go back to especially the second, because the first one, I think we can all agree, is a really masterpiece. It's one of the it's Steven Spielberg, it's one of the best movies, and it's a tough, and it's he's got some great movies.
yeah,
And the second one, again, I honestly believe if people were to revisit it now with what they have, what knowledge we now know, this is what they couldn't, what this is could have been. This is something that could have happened. Well, yeah, I think you'll discover, this is actually not that bad. Yeah, it's a flawed movie. It's not a perfect, as you say. Yeah, it's not a T1, T2 or Aliens scenario.
yeah.
It's not. No. And I don't think anybody ever claimed that. But it's a much better movie than people usually, or film fans, give it credit for.
I agree with that. Now, taking our way, and this will be the last Jurassic movie that I'll be doing on this show because this is the last one Spielberg did.
Yep.
So won't be talking about any of the other ones. Still have one last Indiana Jones, though. Which nobody wants to come on for that show so far. And I wonder why. But for recommendations, Luke, what would you like to recommend for our lovely listeners?
So I have two. We actually touched on it. Prey just came out, a couple of days ago, and I finally got around to watch it this morning before the Jurassic Park and World. And yeah, I heard a lot of good things about it, and I read a couple of things. I didn't want to read too much, and I was surprised. It is a swift, it's like 99 minutes. It's not even 100 minutes, I believe. It's a swift movie. It's a great visually striking movie. It has some amazing there's a couple of one-shot scenes. There's take like a minute. And I was impressed. The story is great. The setting is perfect. And I only had one tiny gripe with the movie, but I don't wanna. I think it would kind of be a spoiler, kind of not. So I don't wanna say. But I'll just say I just wish the movie would have stayed with the Indian tribe for the entire time. I'll say this. Maybe just hint of what the actual my only gripe with the movie is. But I would definitely pray.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. The movie. It gives us because of that. It gives us a great scene, and I'm aware of that. And it might be the highlight of the movie. And I read some people's reviews that say this is the highlight. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But I would still prefer maybe even like a movie that's hour and a half minus some stuff. But no, that's only like a tiny gripe. Everything else, the actress who played the main character, I hope we get to see more of her. I thought she was great. She was kick-ass, and she wasn't just kick-ass. She could actually act. I thought you can actually see her character growth. And it's a really good, because Prey ultimately is not just a Predator movie set in 17th century. It's more about this character and how she learns what it entails to actually lead and what challenges she needs to overcome. And you can actually see her brain working in a couple of scenes, how she figures out, okay, if I'm gonna beat this creature, this is how I need to go about it. Otherwise, I'm gonna fail, and everything is at stake. So, and I really liked how the movie the golden rule of filmmaking is show, do not tell, and it showed us. Her face was always so expressive. You could tell what she's thinking, and I really appreciate that. So, Prey would be my recommendation for a movie, and for a TV show, if I have a bit of time. My girlfriend and I are in the middle of 5th season of Superstore on Netflix, and it's created by Justin Spritzer. I believe he wrote some of the episodes of The Office. He was quite an integral part of that show, if I'm not mistaken. And you can definitely tell it's not that mockumentary kind of drama. There's no people staring in the camera or giving you an interview, but at the same time it could almost be there because it's kind of that style or that kind of sense of humor. And I'll say it's not, I don't think it has the quality of The Office or Parks and Rec, but I think it's still a great and funny almost a sitcom on its own, but it's not really a sitcom. It's more of a funny show because we don't really get sitcoms anymore. We really get funny like comedy shows rather than sitcoms. Mm-hmm. So we are halfway through season 5, so only one more season to go, and I hope they're gonna finish on a strong note. So those would be my recommends.
Awesome. I've not watched Superstore. It is on my watch list. I've heard some good things, and 100% go watch Prey. Yeah. Watch it now. This is how you revitalize a franchise that 100%. Was dead. After The Predator, that movie was an atrocity. That was a hot piece of crap. And it made me so sad because I was so excited when I heard Shane Black was making the next Predator movie. And then they butchered that movie. You could see the editing is terrible. And I don't even know what that movie was supposed to look like, but I know what it turned out to be. But Prey is how you take an idea and put a fresh spin on it. My one recommendation this time is one of my movies that I rewatched recently. Has a connection with Jurassic Park because it has Sam Neill in, and it's In the Mouth of Madness, which is a John Carpenter horror film focusing on an insurance claims agent who winds up trying to hunt down a mysterious and missing author whose books is compelling people to like murder people and go absolutely insane. And Sam Neill goes on this crazy, like, it feels like some of the meta author works of Stephen King, but very, very Lovecraftian, kind of like weird, surreal kind of stuff. It's a interesting mix. It has a cool electric guitar score from John Carpenter, and Sam Neill's great in it. It's not his best film, but I feel like it's his last quality film, at least that I've seen, because like this was like 95, 94, 95, and like Escape from LA came after this. And things kind of went downhill from there. And now John Carpenter doesn't direct movies anymore. He just occasionally does scores for things, which, my God, Firestarter might not have been the best movie, but that score that John Carpenter did was chef's kiss. I actually sat through the credits just to listen to John Carpenter's score. So I think In the Mouth of Madness, especially if you're a Sam Neill fan, he gets to do some great work in it and do some crazy stuff. So that's my recommendation. But Luke, thank you so much for coming on.
Not a problem. Anytime.
And hopefully all of you go give Lost World Jurassic Park another watch. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.